Okay, continuing my thoughts, concluding my thoughts on tomorrow's historic event, the consecration of Russia, in accord with the wishes of the Blessed Virgin Mary, according to the Fatima seers and what they heard, what they reported, the apparition of Mary telling them it was important for the church to do, way back in 1917. So today, there's, we've got this kind of paradox going on with this event because most conservative, traditional-minded Catholics, myself included, are not the biggest fans of the current Pope. I personally haven't liked much of anything that he has done or said since he first ascended to the papacy. However, I believe he is still a valid Pope. And again, I use this for those who say, how can you be Catholic and not be a fanboy of Pope Francis? I use the metaphor of you can be a faithful Catholic and dislike the current Pope, or dislike past popes as well, because there have been past popes also that have been quite bad, bad men who believed bad things, but who never promulgated their beliefs, their faulty beliefs, ex cathedra, that is, from the chair, in any official manner. What I always say is, you can be a faithful Catholic and dislike the Pope in the same way that you can be a patriotic American and dislike the president, right? Or dislike anyone who's a part of the mechanism of the state of the United States of America. So, and I do think that is a valid comparison. Otherwise, I wouldn't have used it. But there's this kind of paradox going on here where, with Pope Francis, most of us who are of a traditionalist bent. I'm not an ultra traditionalist myself, but I am a traditionalist, and it was just to say I believe in the doctrine of the Catholic faith as it has been handed down through the centuries, and that certain doctrines and beliefs do not change and are not meant to ever change with the times. Yet we have this Pope who appears to be somewhat liberal and said some things that are somewhat out there from time to time. He's at least flirted with heretical talk, I think, if he hasn't positively, gone there. Nevertheless, if he is the valid Pope, none of this matters. And this is what I want to make clear with the consecration that's scheduled to happen tomorrow. The Blessed Virgin did not say the Pope has to be a good man. He didn't say that the Pope has to be someone whose theology is really good. She didn't say he had to be a learned and scholarly and trustworthy man. She just said the Pope needs to do this. He needs to say this consecration, and in line with all of the bishops. And God knows there are plenty of bishops who are pretty darn worthless, as far as I'm concerned as well. Not to be judgmental or anything, but in my estimation, there's lots of really crappy clergy out there. There's lots of crappy laymen too. Don't get me wrong, and I'm no great shakes myself. Anyway, the formula needs to be followed in order for this consecration to be valid. And that is, the Pope needs to specifically pray for Russia, that Russia be consecrated to the Immaculate Heart of the Virgin Mary. Now, I have seen the prayer that the Pope is going to be saying, the English translation of it, and it's not like the wording of everything in it. It's not my favorite prayer. A lot of it's kind of smacks of I don't know, post Vatican II hippy dippy sort of stuff. There's a phrase about we've instead of trusting our brothers and sisters, we've begun stockpiling weapons instead, and it's sort of like, okay, yeah, I mean, there's some agendas that are being talked about in this prayer that don't seem to be necessarily germane. Nevertheless, it's not about whether I or anyone else likes the actual form of the prayer or the way that the prayer is written. It's simply about, is Russia mentioned, and is Russia consecrated to the Immaculate Heart of Mary? And the answer is yes. That happens in the prayer. I will attach the prayer here below, so you can read for yourself and you can see what you see if you see what I mean. Maybe you'll like it more than I will. Maybe you'll like it even less than I do. But again, whether it's the kind of prayer that you think sounds really, really good, and it's along the lines of the sort of prayers that really resonate in your soul, or whether it's one that makes you roll your eyes in parts of it, that doesn't matter so much as if it is said in a way that is in accord with the formula that was set forth by Mary at Fatima, which is that Russia be consecrated to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. And that happens in the prayer. Now, Ukraine is also mentioned, and some people have said, well, the prayer is just supposed to be about Russia. Well, it's just not so much. It's not so much. It's just supposed to be just about Russia, but Russia needs to be mentioned. Russia specifically needs to be mentioned and needs to be consecrated to the Sacred Heart of Mary. The prayer also talks about Ukraine, which some have objected to, and it also talks about all people everywhere and all of us, but it says especially Russia and Ukraine. And Ukraine at the time of the Fatima apparitions did not exist as a nation. It was part of the actually, I don't know whether it existed at the time of the original visitation of Mary, but I know that during the Soviet era, there was no Ukraine, the nation. It was just a part of Russia, and I believe before that it was too. So, praying for Ukraine and Russia specifically, when historically speaking, there was a time when they were the same political body. Doesn't seem like much of a problem to me. So is it a problem that the church is racked with sin right now, and that the hierarchy of the church is in really bad shape in a lot of ways right now? Does that matter? Of course it matters, but does that affect the efficaciousness of the consecration? The answer is no, it doesn't. And the reason why that is the case can be explained with recourse to something that was worked out in the early years of the church's history. Now, I don't know this event well enough to know what it was called exactly, but there was a time when the church was outlawed and it was persecuted, and certain clergy, because they were cowardly and they didn't want to die, they didn't want to be tortured and put to death, they denied being Christian while these persecutions of the church were happening. But then afterwards, after the persecutions ended and it was okay to be Christian again, then they wanted to be clergy again. And people, there was a faction of the church that said, no, you can't be clergy again. You forfeited your right to be clergy because you were cowardly during this time of persecution. But that's not the point of view that prevailed. What prevailed, or the I should describe a bit more what I mean here. There was a faction of the church that said these particular clergymen no longer had the power to dispense the sacraments. They could not hear confessions. They could not give out the body and blood. They could not take part in any of the sacraments. They could not do baptisms and so forth. Those were no longer efficacious because these priests had forfeited their true had forfeited the priesthood by their cowardly actions. But that point of view did not prevail. What prevailed was that the notion that the sacraments are what they are, and they are valid and they are efficacious, regardless of how the priests or the bishops or the popes, the clergy generally speaking, regardless of their personal defects. So in other words, you could have a priest who is a murderer and who's guilty of every crime imaginable, a very bad man. But while he's acting as priest, the sacraments that he dispenses are still efficacious because it's not about him. It's not about his character. Now, of course, priests should strive to be good men, of course, just like the rest of us should. But what was decided during this contentious time in early church history, what was decided was that these bad priests, these priests who had this lapse of cowardliness during the time of persecution, that they were still valid priests, and the sacraments that they dispensed were still valid sacraments. So all that is to say, regardless of what you think about Pope Francis, and again, I've made clear I don't care for the guy that much. But I mean, based on what I know, based on what I heard, I might be totally wrong about a lot of things. I don't know him personally, and so I don't have any final judgment of him by any stretch. But just what I have known, what I've heard, I've not generally cared for the guy. And it might be true that he's just doing this for all the wrong reasons. I don't know what they might be. Maybe he's being bribed. Maybe it's just to look good, to pose and posture and what have you. But it doesn't matter ultimately why he's doing it, because it's not about him. It's not about who the Pope is and what his particular moral orientation is. What's important is that it is done, and that the consecration depends on the Pope using these words, saying Russia needs to be consecrated to the Sacred Heart of Mary, and the bishops need to be there saying it as well, backing him up. That's what needs to happen for the consecration to be efficacious. So based on what I have seen of the prayer, based on everything that I know, it looks like they're finally going to get it right. I don't want to speak too soon, but there have been times where popes have sort of gone halfway with it. They've said they've consecrated Russia, but not with any bishops present. Or most famous occasion is when Pope John Paul, who's a pope I'm much more partial to than the current one, But there was a time in 1984 where he said a prayer. He was in Fatima, so it was clearly motivated by Fatima, but he simply consecrated the whole world to the Sacred Heart of Mary. But he did not mention Russia by name. And so some people said, well, Russia's a part of the whole world, so it counts. But others said, no, the Virgin was always very clear that it had to be Russia. Russia needed to be mentioned by name. So that was a time when Pope John Paul II, blessed be his name, blew it. But it looks like tomorrow will be different. And if the prayers are said properly, if this consecration is said properly and performed properly, it will be the first time that has happened. That'll be the first time that it's happened since Fatima happened, which is now longer, like 105 years ago, more than a century old. What will be the effects of it? Well, I doubt that there will be any immediate effects, but who knows? I mean, it's not for me to say. But hopefully one of the effects will be peace in Ukraine. Hopefully an effect that we can see, that we will see somewhat, if not immediately, but then not too much longer from now, will be that the two sides fighting in Ukraine, and I know that it's a complicated issue. Of course, Russia invaded Ukraine. I don't condone that, but I also don't condone NATO aggression, which provided the pretext for what Russia did, which wasn't. I mean, two things can be wrong at the same time. And now the Ukrainian people are suffering because of this invasion. So what I would like to see, what I think everyone should like to see, and what I don't hear enough of, frankly, is the need for a peace agreement to be reached in Ukraine, for the hostilities to end, and for the deaths of innocent people, for the civilian deaths to come to an end in Ukraine. However great, there are debates about Russia's behavior. Some have said Russia has done its best not to target civilians. Others have said that's not really so much the case at all. And I don't know what the truth is, but I do know that innocent people are dying, and are seeing their property destroyed, and they're being forced to flee, and none of that is good. So my hope is that one immediate blessing that will come out of this consecration will be peace in Ukraine, and after that, maybe even greater things. Who knows? Hope one can only hope and pray. And again, consider the source here. I'm just a humble layman, slightly educated in matters theological, but this is my take on the historic consecration of Russia that is to take place tomorrow. So let me know what you think, and also I'll leave the link to the prayer below as it is going to be read, so you can read it and judge for yourself. So thanks for watching. Talk to y'all soon.